Hi, everybody. I am going to probably steal a very good idea that Tom had in his talk. And like partway through, everybody stand up, wave your hands. So just start preparing for that now. There's going to come a point where we'll just kind of take a break and stand up because, as we all know, attention spans, specifically in this room, are probably a little shorter than the average. So there'll be a point when we all kind of stand up and shake our arms a little bit and reset. My name is Kelly Guimont. This is my partner in presenting this afternoon crime, Charles Mangin. And I wanted to start with a very, very brief story. Years ago, I was volunteering for an organization that was teaching iOS development to middle school girls. And we racked up a bunch of computers and a bunch of iPods. And I asked the board one day, we box up thousands of dollars worth of tech and ship it around across the country. And like, is anybody keeping track of any of these? Is there any managing of any of these that's going on? And I got back, you ask very good questions, Kelly. Come back and let us know what you find out. And so I went to Twitter, as was the style at the time. And I said, so I need to know what to do about this. And I got two immediate replies. The first reply was from Tom Bridge, who said, your organization sounds awesome. My company will donate to it. Second, you need something called Monkey, and I will set up this mini that's been kicking around on my desk, and I will ship it to you so that you can manage the software for all these machines. And number three, here's a link to the MacAdmin Slack. I will answer as many questions as I can, but there are so many other people in there who will help you. And the second reply I got was from Charles Edge, who said, I work at Jamf. We have this new thing called Bushel. How many devices are we talking about? And I said, we have like 80 or 90 devices. And he said, I will give you an account for 100 devices. Let me know if you have any questions. So I am literally here today because of the two of them. And the footnote to that story is that years later, Tom hired me to work at his company. And it was February of 2020. And those two sweet summer children were sitting in a car in Washington, D.C., stuck in traffic and talking about what my job was going to look like. And he said, we will send you to conferences to learn things. You'll go to PSU. I know you're a good speaker. Someday you'll speak at PSU. And today is that day. So I just wanted to take a moment and appreciate that because it actually happened. Dreams do come true, right?
It's always good to give credit/blame where it is due.
Yes. So if this sucks, Tom gave a talk earlier. You can submit feedback on
that. Can we get a show of hands from the audience if you consider yourself a neurotypical? Okay, so this presentation is for you. Everybody else, just do whatever. And we'll get to defining terms, what neurodivergent and what neurotypical kind of sort of means. And for those of you who raised your hands and also everybody else, do you work with people or have clients or customers that you would consider neurodivergent? Show of hands. Okay, that's it. Okay, good. Woo! All right.
I didn't expect the actual finger pointing, so I'm kind of impressed by that. Thank you, back row.
Did you get that on the camera? Okay, again, assigning blame.
Yes, exactly. If you missed the presentation this morning, Jason and Roger, who are both here, did a really, really great talk, and it is a very nice companion piece to this one. So if you didn't get an opportunity to see that this morning, and I'm very glad both of you are sitting right where I normally look when I give presentations, because like I said earlier to Jason, no pressure whatsoever. But they will go together really well. They're definitely of a piece. They're a nice set to put together. So if you didn't get to see that one earlier, when it goes up on the YouTube channel, please be sure to seek it out.
Yeah, they went into the DSM-5 definitions and some of the more specific terminology, symptomatic, or symptoms of you're a neurodivergent type person, primarily ADHD, but a few other things. So if you missed it, definitely check that one out. So on to defining some terms.
Yes.
Yeah? Oh,
Do-
okay.
define.
All right, I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might hear me during this presentation use the words like average person or a normal person or a typical person or a regular person, depending on what you've had for lunch. Average doesn't mean what you think it means, or what most people think it means. For example, the vast majority of humans have an above average number of fingers. You might have to think about that for a second. So average doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. Usually when we're talking about norm or norms, there's no such thing as norm. There's median. If you want to talk about statistics, unfortunately, there is no norm, sadly enough. But when I say something like normal person, typical person, what I mean is someone who is neurotypical. And someone who is not neurotypical would be neurodiverse, or the problem child, or whatever you want to call it. And some of the types of neurodivergence include, but are not limited to, what we've got on the screen. And there's more than you can put on one slide. Is there a term or a symptom or whatever up here that somebody's not familiar with, or something that might be missing you have a question about?
I guess first time.
It takes
There
a
we go.
second.
Okay,
yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
What is that? The Mears-Erlin syndrome?
Oh, yes.
I've never seen that before.
That is fairly recent diagnosis, I guess. And it usually has to do with visual and sensory processing. So if, for instance, like the example this morning about
LEDs.
fluorescent, thank
lights,
you.
yeah.
I was like, these aren't LEDs, these are that other
other
word.
one.
Fluorescent lights. It's something about the frequency or like the angle of the sun or the sound in the room or whatever it is can just F with your head. Like you cannot think when that sound is happening, or when you are looking at something on your screen and there's something, some aspect of it is making it so that you just can't process that input. It's kind of related to like synesthesia, where you see sounds and things like that. It's a fairly new term, but there's a lot of research and stuff going into it, whether it's actually a real thing or it's related to something else or whatever. That's what that one is.
So
Art?
for the people here who are not the neurotypical, do you have a diagnosis for one or more of the things on this list? And I'm just going to say a show of hands. You don't have to go around and tell us which ones they are. But this also gets back into the physical activity of like, hey, put your hand up for a thing. All right. Yeah.
Actually, quick question. How many of you consider yourself neurodivergent but don't have any kind of formal or even an informal diagnosis? Okay.
You've just seen enough stuff on YouTube and here and whatever that's like, oh my God, you're talking about me. Yeah. Cool.
So we're going to be talking primarily about ADHD, but also a few of the other more common types of neurodivergence.
Yeah.
But that's mainly just because that's what we're familiar with. So if you have experience with something else, we really want this to be more of a conversation. And again, at some point, we will ask you to stand up and do the hokey pokey and turn yourself around. So feel free to grab the catch box and sort of explain your personal experience if you have something that we're not touching on, or if there's your experience is different from ours, because it's going to be different because everyone's different.
And we do not want to stand up here and hurl information at you for an hour. I mean, that's not fun for anybody. So I promise. So if you have a question or something, like as we're talking, this isn't a save it to the end kind of a thing. You may need various levels of enthusiasm to make sure that one of us sees you so that we can get the catch box to you. But I think Roger said it this morning, like if I don't tell you now, it will leave my brain forever. And we totally get that. So we don't want it to leave your brain forever. We want you to get a share.
So getting back to that, what is normal or what is average? Usually we're talking about something like this, which you might call a bell curve, but in statistics I believe is called a normal distribution. Please, can you close the door? Thank you. But usually what we're talking about by normal or average or whatever is kind of in the middle of this meaty part of the bell curve. And like I said, in statistical terms, it's a normal distribution, which is, again, we don't like that.
I'm trying to remember where we are in the notes. So, yeah. Everybody here is up here. It's just a question of where. So the you are here is the whole thing. So some people way on the left, some people way on the right. And the thing is, this is also not doing any particular, this two-dimensional representation is not doing any particular justice to the fact that this is like 5D chess, basically, as spectrums go. Because everybody's manifestation's a little bit different. A lot of people are maybe autism spectrum with a little bit of something, or ADD with a little bit of RSD, which is a super great characteristic to have manifest itself. Ask me how I know. And it's multidimensional, whatever, and a lot of other things go along with those. So a lot of people aren't just ASD or just ADHD. You may have a side of anxiety to go with that, or a nice little dose of depression here and there. And they all kind of go together, and basically what it comes down to is the way that your brain is wired. So it's very multiverse for all the other comic nerds in here. It is a multiverse of madness. I've decided to just lean into that. The skinny bits on this curve, the way out to the left and way out to the right, are where the habaneros live, which is a word I learned, I think, in this room last year at Jason's presentation, which is in fact delightful, and I use it at every opportunity because habanero is a great word. As I said, maybe on some spectrums you're smack in the middle, but maybe you're on another spectrum, depending what you're measuring, you could be on a completely different bell curve. And because they're multidimensional, there's a lot of bell curves. And it really depends on which one we're talking about, where it is that you are actually located, because there's no one spectrum for all of these things. Like we said before, everybody is neurodivergent from a certain point of view. I am legally obligated to have a Star Wars reference in every presentation, so there you go. Understanding it for the people who are here who are not the neurodivergent, understanding ADHD comes down to filtering, and I'm going to let you talk about that.
Yep. Another presentation earlier this week, we talked a lot about analogies and metaphors and things. And this was the best analogy that I could come up with for someone who is not, who does not have that experience of being ADHD. They can read about it. They can read the Driven to Distraction book, which, by the way, I got through the first chapter and put it down and said, okay, I don't need to read the rest of that book because it's about me. I think of it as like filters. I kind of talked through this with my wife, who has a very severe eyeglass prescription, and I said, we kind of talking through. It's like, imagine you got up and you couldn't find your glasses. How would you get through the day? That's how it is when I don't have my medications, or enough sleep that night, or low blood sugar, or whatever. So I understand it through the metaphor of filters. So a typical working filter means that you can sort of selectively focus on work during work hours. And while you may notice the other distractions and things that are going on, there's music playing, there's baby crying in the next room, or there's squirrels. But you can still choose to focus on getting your work done. It doesn't distract you from being productive through the day. Your neurotypical or sort of median person on those various spectra has a well-controlled and established filter, usually, and then they have the ability to sort of tune in and out the things that are, tune in on the conversations and the things that are important, the visual inputs, those tasks and situations. And that also includes emotional and social contextual information as well. And we'll get to that more in a little bit.
I mean, we've heard,
Yeah.
allegedly, that's how it works for everybody else.
Yeah, so imagine if you're one of those lucky people that wears glasses and can't get around without an assistive prescription lens, trying to describe that to someone who has never had poor vision, has grown up 20/20 vision. And now that I'm getting older, I actually do need reading glasses, and it's a new experience for me. So it's shoes on the other foot a bit. To me, I think attention deficit as a diagnosis is poorly named, because someone with ADD or ADHD is not incapable of paying attention. They're incapable of not paying attention. So like closing the door, the fan, the whine of whatever it is that's just outside of hearing range. I can hear that. You could hear it all. It's all happening all at the same time. And it means that I have sort of weak or poorly controlled perception filters in Doctor Who terminology. And every conversation, every noise, everything that's coming in, the lights, the colors, the sounds, it's all given sort of equal processing time. And if anything, is prioritized based on volume as opposed to relevance. So if something comes in and a marching band comes by, nothing else matters until that marching band is done going by. I won't be able to focus on anything else because it's louder than everything else, even if it's totally irrelevant. And so it's difficult or nigh impossible to selectively focus on the one thing or filter out the irrelevant inputs. Of course, with the right incentives and the right situation and sometimes the right pharmaceuticals, we can get to that in a bit if we want, the people of various neurodivergent states can get into a hyperfocus state on things that are the correct or productive subject matter, to the point of losing track of time because the subject is that engrossing. Mm-hmm. But the default behavior is always collecting all the input. It's all coming in all at once. On the other side, on a different spectrum, the autism spectrum, for instance, often because neurodivergent means divergent and differences, everyone is different. Autism often, not always, manifests in a different kind of filtering. Sort of in the extreme, it can mean hyper-focus on one topic to the exclusion of everything else. Even resulting in anxiety and discomfort when you're forced to focus on something that is not the thing that you want to. It'll also filter out things like the emotional and social context of those things that you're focused on. So it may not be necessarily relevant or socially acceptable or important in the situation because that's also been filtered out. Sometimes makes other people uncomfortable and anxious if you're not accustomed to those interactions. And the filters are also bidirectional. You want to talk about the hyperactive part, the H in ADHD?
Yeah.
Kelly?
So, which is funny because there is no H in my ADD. And I mean, I would love to have that kind of energy, because it would make it easier to not worry about a lot of other stuff. But I was never the kid that bounced my knee or anything like that. So, when you're not the hyper kid, it's hard to nobody diagnosed me with anything because I could sit still, but I would sit in the back and I would talk to Charles the entire time. Whatever's going on in the front of the room doesn't matter because Charles and I are talking about Pokemon or Nintendo or something, and so we're having a conversation. We're absolutely not, trying to be quiet, but I know, but not getting a lot of attention because I'm not the rowdy kid in the front that can't sit still or whatever.
You have the catch box? Who's got the box?
Yeah.
Throw the blob. And catch the blob.
Nice.
There you go.
I am fond of the idea that the H, the hyperactive, is sometimes in your brain, where your brain is the hyperactive part and your body is not. And so you still have the H, it's just not in the way that it was typically presented in young white boys when it was
Yes,
studied.
it is not. It is absolutely not a physical manifestation.
Because my brain is
Yes.
always going,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, when I first got
Good memory.
diagnosed, I explained to the therapist, I don't have a better way to describe this, but it's like everyone else's brain is a 5,400 RPM hard drive, and mine is SSD. So I'm 8 topics ahead by the time you've finished your sentence.
Yeah, so I call my H the hamster. You know the spinning wheel
Yeah.
in my head? That's my H.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Little squeaky wheel.
just on the edge of your hearing, just enough to just, yeah. Yeah. So, and as an example, this is something that stayed on topic, but occasionally having a conversation with somebody when you are perhaps neurotypical and the other person is not, or even better if both of you are, the entire conversation can turn into a family circus cartoon. And so ask your parents. And so you start here, and it can be confusing, and it can make people grumpy. So I was trying to ask you about that thing that time, and now you're telling me about, you're telling me about the Unipiper at Fan Expo Portland last year, dressed up like Doc Brown, and and that wasn't where that conversation was supposed to go. And so now the person that you're talking to is grumpy, and now out of nowhere, that person's super mad and has exploded it, what are you talking about or whatever, and you have no idea where any of that came from. So, like we said, the H generally in female people, the H is not usually a physical manifestation, and so it sometimes makes it a lot harder for us to get diagnosed.
Yes, in female people and also me.
And us, yeah.
Yeah, which, and you were talking about sitting in the back of the room and talking. That can be particularly problematic when you've gone through puberty and your voice gets really deep and really loud.
Yes.
The teacher always calls on you or just tells you to shut up.
Yes.
Because you're talking again, and it's not the time for you to talk, it's the time for you to listen, and it's not, yeah. Anyhow, personal experiences.
So it's funny to say that, yeah, go ahead. We need the couch box.
I can speak loud too.
No, it's got to be on the record. It's for the record.
video, yeah.
Sure.
Oh,
I
incoming.
was say,
There
we'll
you
get,
go.
can we get an intermediary there?
Sweet.
All right.
Thank you. This is very interesting because I am, I guess I am considered neurotypical. But one of the things I'm really trying to figure out the best is communication with somebody that's, neurodivergent. Right?
Yeah.
Is there, because communication in a team, I have a team, right? My team's here too. So
Yeah.
I'll be very vulnerable. I'm not the greatest at communication at best because I know that there are certain people that, folks understand ADHD and anxiety. I have team members that have anxiety or that have ADHD. So communication within my team is a little bit, I don't know how to really properly communicate everything, for everybody, at that same time. Is there like an advice of like how to communicate something, like let's say like a plan of attack for a, like a
Yeah.
Well,
like
you're
a
about
app development.
3 or 4 slides ahead of us.
Yeah, you got ahead of us.
so
which
focus.
which I'm kind of
Sorry.
I'm kind of impressed because
It's their TED
yeah,
Talk,
because
not
you're
mine.
also not neurospicy and you still managed to get out ahead of us in our presentation. So
It
well
just
done,
means we're
you.
telegraphing.
Yeah. So there are a number of things that we are not suggesting that you do. Primary among them is do not diagnose your colleagues. There's an excellent chance you are not a medical professional or a mental health practitioner. But if you are, I'm very interested on why you're at a MAC-admin conference, and we would both love to talk to you after the session.
Business card?
Yeah, please.
Do you take insurance?
Pretty please. Also, don't diagnose yourself. I know there were a few people in here who said that they were not diagnosed, and not to say that you should go talk to somebody and get an official diagnosis, only because there are 2 huge reasons for this. Number one, if you don't know about any of the other things that could go along with it, like you may have a set of things that once you are officially diagnosed, if you only know, like, I can't pay attention and I always bounce my leg, or I this, I that, whatever. There may be other things that go along with that. Maybe it turns out you actually have, a little bit of an anxiety disorder to work on too. And if, like Charles and I, you are a firm believer in better living through chemistry, your world can improve dramatically if it turns out maybe you only need a tiny bit of attention drug, and what you really need is something else to regulate a different area of your brain so that you can be less anxious or sleep better or manage other sorts of conditions that can help exacerbate everything else. Because like if you've got a couple of interesting wires crossed and those two particular disorders become a feedback loop into each other, it is really hard to dig out of the most basic of things in a lot of ways. So,
And diagnosing yourself and not getting an official diagnosis can also lead to self-medicating with non-prescription drugs. And often if you are, say, misdiagnosing yourself, when I was first, like it was early 20s or so, I was having more and more trouble at work and more trouble with just getting my work done and losing my temper, and I was losing my shit. And my boss, who's still my mentor, mumbled 20 years on, is still, he's very calm and patient with me, and he sat me down and he said, you need to go see a doctor and get him to get you some antidepressants because you're depressed. And if you don't, you need to get a new job. And that was the gentle way of telling me to get my shit straight. And I was like, sure, I know I'm depressed, I know I'm anxious, I'm unhappy. So I went to go see a psychiatrist and told him about what was going on, and he's like, Here is this book. It's called Driven to Distraction, read it. I'm gonna give you some antidepressants, see how you feel on them, but I also want you to try these exercises, look at these things and see if they also describe you. And like I was saying before, I got through the first chapter of that book, got distracted, put it down, never get back to it. But I stopped reading because it was about me. I mean, like every single page was like, you are ADHD. Your name is Charles Mangin. How does this guy know me? It was written in the 70s. Anyhow, so moral of the story is if I had just gone and basically treated myself for depression, I probably would have ended up, in a puddle somewhere, as opposed to the functioning adult that I am now. So you are not a medical professional, right? Unless you are, in which case raise your hand. Okay, good. So we got to don't diagnose your colleagues, don't diagnose yourself. Next up is, here we go.
yeah, don't diagnose yourself unofficially. Absolutely go get diagnosed. And like I said, part of the reason to get diagnosed is because, like Jason and Roger mentioned this morning, there are official channels of accommodation that can be made for you in a professional capacity sometimes. And additionally, like I said before, like maybe you have another thing or two that are helping to exacerbate everything, and being able to manage all of those things on whatever front that takes is so much better. Also, don't mentally diagnose other people. Like, don't look at somebody who's very chatty or sometimes seems really distracted at work and just be like, oh, you must be ADHD. Like, you must be ADD, whatever. Because again, everyone's different. Some people are just distracted because they're distracted. Like, not everybody has their poop in a group. And there can be a lot going on so maybe somebody's not ADD, maybe they're caregiving for a family person or going through something serious, and it's just really hard for them to concentrate like this month, or this year. And that doesn't necessarily mean that person is ADD. And even if you think someone is, unless they have told you, don't say to them, oh, well, you just must be ADD. Do you have ADHD? Like, sweetie, no. This is akin to the thing that everyone says about asking women if they're pregnant. Unless they are actively delivering a child, you should never ask a woman that question. Because it's, first of all, it's rude to just say that to somebody, whether they are or aren't, especially if you are not a medical professional who is diagnosing them. But also, you probably do not want HR all up in your business, and that is one of the fast ways to make that a reality. But there are things that we will tell you to do. And the first of those is to listen to people. So this is your slide, my friend. Listen to them. And if you are one of the neurotypical people here and is looking for a way to interact better with your team, ask them. Because we are all distracted little snowflakes, and the thing that works for me may not be the thing that works for Charles, may not be the thing that works for Jason or Roger or anybody else. So find out from your team what it is you want from them, because if you, neurotypical person, can make a tiny adjustment in what you present or how you present it to people, Jason mentioned bulleted lists a couple of times. If you're used to writing a paragraph in an email, but you're working with Jason and Jason just wants a list, just make the list and shoot over the list. Jason's much happier, you're getting much more done, and it wasn't a dramatic shift in anything that you had to do in order for everything to be a lot better.
And if you're the Jason in this situationship, make sure that you tell your manager or you tell the people that are managing those projects, really, I just need a checklist. Yeah. I stared at this paragraph, this email for hours and hours, and I never got to the last line because I couldn't. Just give me a bulleted list, and we'll be much happier. The project will get done. And if you listen to each other, that's the basis of communication.
Yeah.
So,
which is basically an excellent management technique anyway. Yep. Not everybody does well with a paragraph, with a wall of text, whether they are neurotypical or not. Mm-hmm. So if there's some, it's also if you actually do know. So, that there are people on your team who are habaneros, and they came and told you that. And we still live in a world where that is a piece of information that not everyone necessarily gets access to. Not everyone is comfortable telling anybody anything like that. So, I'm up here appropriately labeled, but I will not talk to you about the amount of work it took to stand up here and wear a t-shirt that says ADHD on it. But not everyone can. Not everyone feels like they can. Not everyone feels like they should. There are work situations. Again, to go back to the talk this morning, Roger had a very excellent story about being in a position where it was really uncomfortable and hard to try to be forced into a position where it was a thing that had to be revealed. And you don't necessarily want that. So if you have a good relationship with your team, talk to them. And if somebody comes to you and tells you that, there's an excellent chance that they're just telling you directly that there has been no HR interaction as a piece of this, and just want to be better. Because part of the reason that they're telling you is so that the two of you can work together to make it better. I am telling you because I like my job, and I like working with you, and we have a good relationship, and I want to continue to do that. And so I'm telling this to you because I'm struggling in some way, and you need to know that this is the bit of context I have that you don't, because I know how I'm wired, and you don't. It doesn't show up on the outside. And so making that a thing that people, making that, having somebody tell you that is like a level of trust. And if it is not something that you already knew, then that person has granted you a certain level of trust. We've all been sitting in security talks this week. We know what access looks like. And that is way more access, that's admin access to somebody's brain. And not everybody gets that. Not everyone is granted that access. And so if you get that, it is also upon you not to just go blab it out to other people, but also...
Again, HR situation.
Yes, once again, HR. But it's a thing, people aren't necessarily complaining about it. They're telling you because, I have taken you into my confidence because it is important to me to be here and to get to continue this relationship. And in order to do that, we need to move forward in a slightly different way.
Yeah. So, to your example, if your teammates trust you with that information, I'm ADHD, or I am on the autism spectrum, or I have an anxiety disorder, or whatever it is, they've trusted you with that information, with that diagnosis. You realize it, but not everybody else, not all of the managers in the world are sitting in this room. That's not me complaining to you or giving you an excuse that I can't work because I have this, disability.
Oh, I can't today, boss. My ADHD is really acting up.
Oh, my ovaries. Anyhow, it's not complaining. It's not grousing. It's not looking for an excuse. It's giving an explanation and asking for, whether it's an accommodation, like, please don't schedule me after 5 o'clock ever, or make sure that when you're communicating, you're doing it in discrete chunks, things like that, those kinds of accommodations. Excellent. On the other side, like I was saying before, if you're the one that's telling your manager or HR or what have you, be specific so that it doesn't come back as he's complaining about having too much of a workload, the hours or the physical environment because of the lights again or whatever. He's just grousing. Who's got the box?
Good catch.
Good.
Charles, I'm curious, given the sentiment that, we don't want managers to be acting as a healthcare professional and suggesting that you have a specific diagnosis, but also given your story about your mentor suggesting that you have a diagnosis, how do you feel about that situation, looking back, saying that was a catalyst for your for your self-care?
Well, so some context, a few years prior to that, he shared with me later on, a few years prior to that, he had gotten a diagnosis with major depressive disorder after going through a divorce and all kinds of his own personal shit. And so he recognized in me a lot of the mood and irritability and stuff that he had fixed by getting a diagnosis of depression. So he was sharing that advice to me. But if he had not said anything about getting diagnosed or going to see a doctor, but just get your shit straight or you're fired, me getting my shit straight was still I got to talk to somebody about this. I got to get some antidepressants or some kind of, something that helps me sleep because I can't sleep at night, and then I'll feel a whole lot better. And then that's what got the ball rolling. So it wasn't specifically go get diagnosed so much as you're gonna need to get a new job. That was the kick in the pants for me. But you're right. If the management says to you, we think you are, roll the dice on this spectrum, and we want you to go get diagnosed. Otherwise, we're not going to help you out. That's very different because they're doing the medical diagnosing for you, which is that I would I don't know who I'd talk to about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But also, like, he wasn't treating you different. He didn't decide something and then not say anything to you and just go, well, I know Charles has some kind of problem, and so I'm going to treat him differently as a result. It was, you should probably speak to a professional about the situation you are in because I can tell that you're having a hard time.
Yeah.
Which is much better. That's sort of that bit is kind of a good management technique. Like, I can tell your poop is not in a group and you really ought to work on that.
I'm not going to walk on
So-
eggshells around you like some
Right.
people will because, oh, I don't want to make him angry. I don't want him to, get all, upset again. But when people do that, it just makes me more angry. But again, that level of, I understand that you're having trouble because I was 20-something and you want to throw that to the back of the room. So like I said, I was in my 20s and didn't have anything going on in my brain. And so, nice, the relay, the alley-oop. So I wasn't gonna go ask for help.
Right.
But someone telling me I needed help was a big push. Go ahead.
So, no, I appreciate that because I manage a small team, and at Penn State we have it used to be called the EAP, Employee Assistance Program. So instead of, I fully agree with, it would be completely wrong for me to say, hey, you should go, you're probably having this, and I'm not going to diagnose anybody because I really appreciate the point you made. But what's really nice is the EAP at, for example, Penn State, and probably every big company has this. Talk to your HR rep, and they usually have a mental health support line or something that they will then, talk with you, try to figure out what you're after, and say, oh, and then give you a referral to a psychologist or psychiatrist, and go from there. And then that's how you can get the medical advice that you might need. So just want to throw it out there. Just talk to your HR reps, and they can direct you.
They may not always be.
Yeah.
They may not always have your best interests at heart, but it's their job to at least give you the information that you're asking for.
Right.
Even if it's just so that 6 months later, you're not coming to them with a lawsuit because no one at the company paid any attention to me.
Right.
So there's always a way to get help.
Right.
It may be difficult to find, but you just ask for it.
So I should back up then. That's a great point. Yeah, because people could be worried about retaliation or otherwise or getting out. And I'll be honest, I had an HR person one time that disclosed something that was confidential, and they shouldn't have done that. So that has happened. So that's a great point. On Penn State, for another example, Penn State's website has, you don't have to call HR, it's publicly searchable, and you call this other third-party company that is completely anonymous. They don't link you at all to your Penn State identity whatsoever. HR is never told about it, actually. So that's, I was saying, talk to HR, I should have really mentioned, go to their website and then look for those health advocate type of things, so you don't even have to tell HR. So
EAP is
you
usually,
made a great point.
It's usually a page in the back of the paperwork you get for your insurance. If your company offers it, it's usually a page in there of the stuff that sort of seems adjacent. Like if you have like life insurance forms and things like that, when they give you your little packet every year, a lot of times that's what it is it'll just be back, and it usually has a lot of squishy language on it. Sorry to get technical. Because it'll say things like it's an assistance plan, and if you need to talk to a person and that kind of stuff. And so you kind of wonder what it's actually for, and mostly what it's for is sort of tier 1 support for your brain. Kind of like call them up, like this is the deal. They have questions they can ask you about different kinds of things, and then they can route you to what you need and give you sort of an entry point into like, this is the type of person, the type of professional that you need. And this is the phrase that pays. This is the thing that you should say to them when you get there, so that that you got from us, so that you can go to somebody and have a productive encounter with some sort of medical professional to do the things.
And sometimes helps with cost.
And it does help with cost. If
it's
you
covered
route
by
through
your
EAP, then
if it's in the back of your insurance from
Yeah.
Blue Cross Blue Shield or whatever. Here's the number to call if you're having a medical emergency. Here's the number to call if you have questions about your benefits.
Yeah.
One of those benefits numbers is going to be, what are my mental health benefits?
Yeah.
Who do I talk to if I need to ask questions about that? If I need to get a diagnosis, is it, who is it that's in network that's going to get covered by the insurance? And how long is this going to take? And oh my God, all the paperwork and all the things. Anyhow.
And every inch of that goes against everything I believe in on
Yeah.
a cellular level, and it's just awful, and it doesn't matter because we live in the U.S. So, the other thing on that is that it is it can be super helpful, and I just want to point out one thing real quick, and that is if you go to psychologytoday.com, you can go, if you need a specialist, you can go there and you can filter by your insurance. And they will show you only people who take your particular flavor.
Just note that may be out of date.
Yeah.
That information may not
Yeah,
be.
but they always give you an initial contact, like you can always verify, but it at least will help filter down that list sometimes. Because again, that's super intimidating and nobody wants to make an awkward phone call, and now you get to make like 15 of them, and it's super great. So part of this we covered a little bit because someone read ahead on our slides.
Didn't even put them out in
And
PDF
like we
format.
didn't even give them to people, and like still somehow you manage that. I'm more impressed. I'm not even mad. Play to people's strengths. Like this is just good management technique. Like like I said before, you don't have to be neurodiverse to prefer a bullet list, to prefer sit and have a conversation as opposed to writing everything down. Any of those kinds of things. Like figuring out the best way to communicate with your team is something that every manager kind of has to do. And it may feel weird, but I have never been happier in an interaction with a supervisor than when they said, how can I do this better with you going forward? Whatever it is, status check-ins, whatever. Like, can we do this 15-minute meeting over email instead? Can I just send you an email of what I worked on this week instead of having to have that meeting? Whatever it is. Like, it will feel awkward to ask somebody because it feels weird, especially for those of us whose hyperactivity is already here. Not that I think there's anyone in this room who is anyone like that, who's just super duper chatty.
But also if you're in the management superior supervisor role and asking one of your reports, how can I help you?
Yeah. It feels weird to say, like, how can I talk to you?
But it's that leading from the front.
But
or,
yes.
The whatever servant manager or whatever the business book from however many years ago put it. But put yourself in the shoes, put yourself in the position of the report as opposed to the manager, and ask how, as the manager, you can help them get their job done better.
Yeah.
And that's just good management practice. Play to their strengths. You don't put somebody fourth in the batting order and blah, blah, sports metaphors. I don't know. Anyhow.
Yeah. Time to stand up.
Yeah.
Everybody stand up for a minute.
Everybody stand up. Put
Everyone
your right
who's
hand
able,
in.
please stand up.
Right hand out.
I know it's okay. I know some of us have to make a noise when we stand up. It's okay.
Yeah.
This is
I can guess the
Yeah, this
average
is-
age by the amount of noise it takes.
Yeah, this is a safe space for everyone to go, oh, I get it. Yeah. Put the arms up. Yeah.
Yeah, I
very
know that
nice.
you're here because you're missing your nap.
Yeah. We know it's nap time, so it's totally fine. So shift back and forth a little bit. Put your right foot in. Put your right foot in. Put your right foot out.
All right, now sit down and shut up and listen.
Yeah. We're in the home stretch. Thank you. Yeah. I'll leave this one up for a while.
So this goes along with the topic of motivation and setting goals and things. And some people like the gamification of their job. They have different ways of getting motivated, and sometimes it's waiting till the last minute because the last minute is the only minute that matters. So don't get on them because they haven't made 90% of the progress in 90% of the time. We got a question in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of follow up on what we said before.
You were holding on to it for a minute, and so it may not have activated, so
Did
just
it
make
not
sure it's talking. Yeah, give it a good shake.
How's it now?
Give it a tap. I don't.
Better?
I can hear you.
From here, I mean, I can
Okay.
hear you fine, but I can't tell if it's recording or not, if it shows up
I
in the
think it's
recording.
good.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I came to IT and Mac management after 35 years in retail on the service end. So 9 years at Apple doing service at a store. I think,
Thank you for your service.
yeah, hopefully I've helped avoid a lot of calls. But I do think that we as managers, it's kind of our obligation to, with empathy, be able to adapt ourselves to the people that report to us. Because I think that, I know we talk about, you feel so great when somebody asked you, how can I help you? The sad thing is that should be the rule and not the exception.
Right.
What is this
And
word
so-
you're using? M?
What's that?
The word that you used there.
Empathy.
Oh, I'll have to look that
Yeah.
up.
I think I saw a show about it on like Sci-Fi, like 20 years ago. Yeah.
But I just think that, you know, any of us that are in management positions, I think that that's kind of an obligation that we have. And I think that it's very easy coming from the tech world, which is there's so much that's not focused on those soft human skills. You know what I mean? And I think that we
Because we spend all our time with machines, and a lot of people spend their time with machines because not everyone is good at people.
Right.
And when you can't people good, then it makes working with machines a lot more
Yeah,
appealing.
and managers are really all about actionable takeaways.
Yeah.
That's why we put actionable on the slide. We're both a little itchy about it. I'm not gonna lie,
Anyhow.
because it's a very
So, but yeah,
business
you're-
buzzwordy thing.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Yeah, a lot of people make it to management that shouldn't be managers. They're great engineers or they're great individual contributors, and that's how they get promoted. And they don't necessarily have the best people skills. So I think you're right. As a primary, your prime directive as a manager is not to get the most output out of your team, so much as not burn your team out. Because what was it earlier? People don't quit companies, they quit managers.
They quit
Yeah, don't be that
managers,
guy.
yeah.
Don't be the one that, yeah. And you got another, yeah.
There you go.
Hey, going back to the previous slide with Laszlo there, it's
I love that slide.
not only does a deadline really help or some sort of target, but what a lot of managers do and have done, at least in my past, is it's a movable date. And I know it's a movable date. And if I know it's a movable date, then that deadline does nothing for my focus. So, an actual date, like I need this by this day and stick to it. Sure, there's gonna be times when things are gonna need to be delayed for whatever reason, but if that becomes a habit, it actually can break that benefit for.
But here's the pro management move for that, is when you have time, I have now stopped listening. There's no deadline. I will never work on this. So even if it doesn't need a deadline, if it's a thing that needs to happen in the next 5 years, tell me tell me you need it in a month, even if you don't, so that there's a deadline that I can backtrack from. I need to have, it's gonna take this long. If I need it done by this time, that helps me portion out my time, because scheduling is key to my squirrel brain. So that part is really important. Even if you don't need it in a month, but you need it to be done this quarter, that's great. Because like you guys said this morning, we had this conversation like Tuesday. Now, not now. Now is this week, this conference, right now. Next week and Christmas 2025 are the same time away in my brain. August and January are not now. That's way down. So I had the same, I will not make them edit video for this, but I had the same, oh, shucky darns. I have 2 conference presentations I am giving in like a week. Whoa. And luckily, This is also me. I was older and therefore wiser. So that makes it really hard to, it makes it really hard when there is no deadline. Like, especially if you've had this open, honest, kind of awkward for everybody, but super useful conversation, then I always need a deadline. If you don't give me a deadline on it, it's not going to get done, because everything that does have a deadline will come before whatever the thing was that you told me that I have forgotten about because you said when you have time, and so now I'm not listening because it is not a priority, because if it was a priority, I would need it done at a certain point.
Yeah, when you say, do this when you have some free time,
Oh.
I'll look on my calendar. I don't see any. There's no free time block on my calendar.
Yeah.
And if there's
'Cause I'm
not a block
team-
on my calendar, it doesn't get done. It's
I'm
like
team
there's no
hyper
ticket.
schedule. There's no space there.
Yeah.
It's all filled in.
Yeah.
So yeah, and gamification is a good way to do that. If you have, sometimes we do that for ourselves. To me, the personal appeal of the Pomodoro is, how much can I get done in that time? How much of this thing? How many tickets can I get updated in, before the ding? How many of these? How much of that? So that gives me some motivation to make that happen. You're shaking that like you got
Yeah,
something
no,
to say
it
now.
was, what you just said really triggered something. Sometimes it's my own will to challenge myself. And when I was, more of a help desk role, the ticketing system was a good way to track that. And it's like, oh, I can close a ton of tickets. And so that was my motivation. But then as soon as I got more in the engineering side of things, unless you're working for a company that's doing like Kanban or Scrum or something like that, there really is no tracking system for that.
Right.
And-
It's like it's just a spreadsheet that somebody put together, or
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get to the takeaways, another thing to look up in your free time is, I think it's either a paper or a book called The Tetris Effect. And it's about the literal effects of sitting down and playing Tetris on people with PTSD. And scientists have, figured out that those little tiny dopamine hits every time you drop a block, those little puzzles that build into bigger puzzles that give you a little tiny reward over time, you get bigger rewards. And
Until you get the long one down the side, and then
anyhow,
yeah.
that is excellent motivation for anybody, but in particular for people with that attention deficit, novelty-seeking kind of behavior. They're looking for those little dopamine hits throughout the day. If it's a little ding that says, hey, you cleared another ticket, or it's the Pomodoro timer going off, and oh, I got another 200 lines of code in this thing. All those little things throughout the day, or the attaboys, the kudos, the email that says, yeah, you guys did a great job on this project. Those little sort of reinforcements can help you get through the day. And if you're the one that's on the giving side of those, it's not just, oh, I'm checking the box, I've done this thing, I've done this thing. It really is like the difference between going home and, collapsing on the couch and going home and sitting down on the couch and watching a movie and being happy about it. Either way, you're sitting on the couch, which is not good because you need to get exercise. Anyhow, go on.
Other exercises.
Oh, do we have another question?
Yeah.
You got to fight for it. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh.
There's a toss-up between the coffee and the
First time
laptop.
I've ever used.
Yeah, I was worried which was gonna go. All right.
One thing I come up with before I started learning about ADHD research was this concept of just one little victory every day. Like that dopamine here, I solved something, or I wasn't just completely distracted and got, fractaled
Yeah.
off into the distance and just felt so frustrated. That kind of thing there, just that one little thing. If you can.
And
Yeah.
it really can be that one win that changes the difference between the frowny face icon on my my daily tracker
Yeah.
and the smiley face icon that says I had a great day, and I can look at it.
It doesn't even have to be work related.
No, it doesn't.
Personally, like for me, I build Lego sets. And even just the completion of a Lego set, or even a completion of a bag from a large Lego set, that's a sense of accomplishment. That
That's
gives
a
me
Tetris block.
dopamine
You get the
it's
long
that
one.
to
long
get
one on the
back on
right, yeah.
task and to do what I do. So like,
Need the
you'll
square
see
one.
me, I'll be working and I'll
square
have,
square.
you know, a giant Lego set, you know, sitting over here, and I'll work on it throughout the day just to kind of
Yeah.
keep that dopamine flowing.
And I think there's something to be said, particularly because there's a lot of technology people in this room, that's just a guess, that we work, because this is the thing that I have discovered about myself, is that a physical manifestation, I spend all my time on a screen. And at the end of the day, you know, when you are a person who puts a thing in a bag, at the end of the day, you've done that for 8 hours, and here's the stack of bags that are full now because I did that. And I can point at that and look and go, there it is. So, like, if I'm watching TV or doing something like that, I like yarn time. So I will knit or crochet a thing, and I have a physical manifestation of a thing that I have done that I enjoy that I can point at and go, now I can hang that towel on the oven handle because that's my jam, yo. I have backup in the back. We'll talk yarn later. It'll be great. But part of that is the physical manifestation of it, because for a lot of us, once we've done 8 hours of work, what is a thing that you can show somebody that shows that you know, I cleared a bunch of tickets today. I can point at the screen, but that's not the same as all the Post-its on the Kanban board because I read the Phoenix Project and I moved all my stickies from one column to the next. And that column being empty is a manifestation of what I did today. That kind of thing can really make a difference. And so I have found that one of the things that I find useful is the tactile of that. So I hate mowing the lawn. It is like a 1.5 mile walk when I do it. So my yard is no joke. But the trade-off is that I get to point at all of that lawn and say, it's all nice and short now, and I am why, and that's awesome, because that's a really good feeling. I hate doing it, and I swear about it the entire time, but at the end, I get to go, I did that, and having that feeling, particularly because of so much of what I spend my time on is things that are not, there is no physical manifestation of I reset 15 passwords today or patch managed a whole stack of machines or anything like that. Like it's not something that's quite as obvious, and I think for a lot of people that's a thing that really helps. So.
Maybe you just get a bucket of rubber ducks to sit next to your desk whenever you feel like you've done something good, or get a
Talk to Brad Chapman about
yeah. I've already got a half dozen of them from him. And it's like, oh, I've done something good. Throw the duck into the other bucket. And then by the end of the day, you got more ducks in this bucket than that bucket. It's a tangible result of, I have done the thing.
Yeah.
So anyhow, before we run out of time, we got about 10 minutes on the clock, and I do want to have some general Q&A. Action items, actionable takeaways. For those of you who part of your task is teaching, skill sharing, training, a lot of times in IT, you are teaching users how to solve their own problems, or you're teaching the junior help desk folks how to fix the problems of people that come to them. I wanted to reference a presentation from last year. This actually goes to a time code where she starts talking about different learning styles and how to communicate best to people that learn visually, people that learn with examples, people that learn with hands-on. That was an excellent presentation about giving presentations, weirdly enough, but she really she knocked it out of the park with communication styles for, to match up with learning styles. So I wanted to reference that, so everybody have a look at that. Let's go back here. Okay. We mentioned gamification. As part of that sort of teaching and skill sharing kind of thing, use that novelty seeking part of a lot of neurodivergence as an advantage. So find something that's interesting to learn or to add throughout the process, or when we get to the point where you have saved that file in a plist format, well then we're going to do something totally different, and we're going to make an icon for it. It's like, okay, we're not typing anymore. Now we're drawing, or now we're getting up and turning around, that kind of thing. And if you are in an, if your audience is people that are easily distracted, remember ADHD does not mean short attention span. It just means that there needs to be a wall between what you want to focus on and all the stuff that you want to not focus on. So remove the sources of distraction. Close the doors in the back of the room. Remove
Make sure your computer doesn't have a bunch of interesting stuff in the menu bar or in the dock.
or
For me to sit there and wonder
Emails that
about, and what icon is that,
pop
and
up
do I
and-
have that installed, and yeah.
mute your stand-up notifications on your watch during the presentation. Otherwise, that's all I'm going to hear is ding, ding. Mute the notifications, quit any of the background apps that might throw a thing up on the screen, because I'll focus on the subject of that email alert that you just got from the CEO more than what you're telling me, because I know the CEO just emailed you about that thing that time. I'm like, okay, what is he talking about, the CEO? When it comes to doing support, as opposed to the training and teaching part of things, getting to the root cause of that support ticket can sometimes be a little bit tougher when the person that you're trying to support is in a different place on the spectrum than you are. You can recreate a problem, you can describe a problem in a way that you understand, but the person that's trying to describe the problem to you may not have that same vocabulary. A lot of times it's show me the steps, show me what you're doing, that gets to that error message, as opposed to describe what's not working.
Yeah.
Or what are you trying to do and how do you get there, as opposed to what isn't working, what, like,
Yeah.
is it,
What
okay, so you
broke?
can-
Well,
yeah.
if I knew what broke, I wouldn't be on the phone with you, would I?
It's not printing. Okay, let's back up. What are you printing? What are you printing from? Show me the steps. And then you can avoid those XY problems of, I think I need a new printer when really you need a new cable. So don't tell me what kind of printer you want when you just need to plug it in again. A lot of people that are on various ends of spectra, the habaneuros, sorry,
Yes.
will often try to solve the problems themselves, which makes us excellent in troubleshooting, but sometimes we'll go down the wrong path. If you have someone that will get themselves into trouble that way, just knowing that going in, because they've told you, well, I tried this, and then I tried these 3 things, and it seems like it made it worse. Again, that's a challenge, but backing up and understanding that that's the way they approach the problem is a lot easier when you understand that is coming from a different point of view than you would typically have, as opposed to blaming the user for that, for making it worse. They were trying to help. Because a lot of times these are the same people that took apart their toys when they were kids to understand how they work. And they didn't always put them all back together.
Or had enough times where they put them together and it worked better than it did before. Yeah. So now
I have leftover parts.
That's my go-to, yeah. This is the other one. This is Jason's presentation from last year.
From last year, and then there
Which is
should be a link,
fantastic.
hopefully, to the,
For those who are at our session, I did post up the slides to the GitHub.
The one
repo
for
that we
this year.
put
Oh,
out.
okay, cool.
yeah. So there will be a link at some point somewhere to the presentation video for this year, but this is the prequel, all about learning about your own neurodiversity, and then the one from this year is learning about and I guess discovering other people's neurodiversities.
So real quick, because the
got-
screen in the back just turned red, to be an ally to your team for the neurotypicals here, I know, perhaps, well, once or twice in my life, I have been described as a problem child. And I'm sure all the rest of us in here have been, you're a problem child, hard to work with, all kinds of really nice ways to say, like, I can't even with you.
Squeaky wheel.
Yeah. And part of that is sort of because of the stuff that is our superpowers. So we're going to ask a bunch of questions or try something sideways. So I know a whole lot of neurodivergent people who are in QA because being a software adversary is very easy when all you want to do is go click all the buttons and click them in the wrong order and do it the opposite direction and scroll the other way because that's your jam. So yeah, if you're not in QA, maybe it's a thing you should consider. But we're always looking for another way to do the thing, whatever the thing might be. And so like those might be the people that you want to put on your beta track. You have an early adopter bunch of people. Those are the folks who are going to run into every one of those sharp edges at top speed and help you figure out what's going on. And if somebody's telling you that something isn't working with the style you have, with the interactions that you're having with the team, figure out why. And it's on us to be able to quantify that in some way. We may not be able to do the best job of it, but we can say, like, maybe I don't have a solution for you, but I can tell you the wall of text doesn't work. I can tell you having these things be 2 hours at a whack is not going to get anybody anywhere, that kind of thing.
Yeah, all these buttons are gray. I can't tell which ones are turned on or which ones are turned off. Is it the light gray ones or the dark gray ones?
Yeah.
Those are really good testers because they, like you said, push all the buttons.
Don't take it personally as well.
Also,
is a
yes,
big one.
excellent.
That's the next one, yes.
Being an ally, don't take it personally.
Yeah. And just like other sort of general allyship things, speak up if you know, if someone is struggling and you can see that they're struggling, recognize that in them and see what you can do to help. But also be able to do that in a way that other people can see. So that if we're all in a meeting together and I can see that at minute 35 Charles has checked out, then I need to make sure that we have half-hour meetings with Charles. And that's an easy thing that I can do. I mean, no meeting should be longer than half an hour, but I think that's probably a different talk. But do what you can to help the people on your team when it is obvious to you that there is some way that this does not work. And when you see that it's happening in another context, meetings with other departments, talking to folks about whatever these other things are, making sure that you are helping them out in those contexts as well. It's not just about you and your own meeting. It's about with other departments, with other parts of the company, hires up, people who are doing completely different jobs. If everybody has to interact in some way, get them when you get them all together, make that work. And if somebody shares that thing with you, if somebody comes to you and says, I am divergent in this particular flavor, like we said before, don't go blabbing it around. The important thing to take away from all of this, now that we've given you all of these actionable takeaways, the last one is that really what you want to do, if you are the neurotypical person, is spice up your life.
And with that,
that's our talk. You are welcome for having the Spice Girls in your head the rest of the day.
And the clock said 0.